I just remembered we were doing live stream last week and I got a comment. People wanting to see my biceps. Apparently they want to see me flex my biceps. What's wrong with you guys? Anyways, welcome to the databases video. Today I'm going to be showing you how to make SQL, MySQL, MariaDB, and SQLite, meaning storing on your hard drive database. So if I type something through the chat like this and I go ahead and refresh my little PHP myadmin, which is connected to my MySQL database. As you can see, we are now storing the unique ID, name, location, and message, as well as recipients here. And what you can do, what I'm going to be showing you how to do, is make a command that is going to pull these data from the database, just like that. Very nice. And then you can even make it interactive and teleport to the location from which the player has chatted. All right, it's going to be very good. Are you ready? Let's crack into it. This is going to be like a quick implementation guide, to get you results quickly, to show you what is possible. However, if you want a deep dive into concepts like these, we actually have a full coding class where I combined both Java. If you've never coded in Java, you're going to get a full Java course. Plus, I've combined it with a full Spigot and Paper and also Velocity bungee cord class, meaning you will be able to make GUI, databases, mini games, and so much more. Check out the link in the video description. Without any further ado, let's crack into this. And unfortunately, I destroyed my other monitor, so I really don't have another screen to look at, because typically the way I make these videos, I prepare everything beforehand, as you can see here, and then I try to type as much as I can in front of you guys. But we're gonna get creative, so basically I'm just gonna walk you through the code. We're gonna be coding a little bit, but of course people are not interested in hearing the keyboard all the time, so I've already prepared everything that we need. Now, we already have a full sort of code structure from the previous videos in this chapter. So if you don't have that, that's completely fine, because what we're going to build, you can just, implement directly into your own plugin. It does not require any foundation or any library whatsoever. First thing I want you guys to make is a new class called database. And this class is going to be a singleton. So you just need to put a field here, such as I have. And then we're also going to be working with JSON. And the best way to work with JSON is to use a library from Google, which simply means if there is a list of recipients like this, we can convert that into a JSON and then save it to the database and then read it back from it. Okay, so we need an instance for it. Whoops. And then we need a settings class where I'm going to be storing all these super sensitive passports, and I do like to keep it separate from my other program's logic, so I actually have a separate class here. This class we've made in a settings video. If you missed that or you need to revisit on how to make settings, feel free to watch that. And then, very important, we need to make a connection class. So import this from the Java SQL package. Awesome. And then let's make a constructor. Very simple. All we have to do is really just get the settings instance right here. And then I'm going to make a load method that will connect first to the database and then create the table that we need. So let me walk you through the connect method. First of all, I've wrapped the entire thing in an exemption. Now that you have that, what we can also do, we can just prevent the class from being called again if the connection has already been established, so it's not null, and it's opened. What I'm going to be doing in a sec, I'm going to be showing you how I implemented this database type. I guess you guys already know how to code in Java, so this is just the basic enum. It can be a MySQL, basically the same structure as MariaDB or all these other forks, and then it can be an SQLite. Some questions why I'm not using H2. H2 is actually not that safe when it comes to Minecraft, because if you close the server unexpectedly, if you hit the little X button and close the window without typing stop, there's been data saving issues on H2. So I guess it is okay to use in a production environment, but in this testing environment, I just want to be closing the server all the damn time. I do not want to face any weird saving issues. So I'm just going to go with SQLite. Okay. Having said that, that's the database type. Now up here, what we have to do, we have to actually load the driver. And this is sort of a very old school way in Java. You have to basically call the class here from Java link package, which is already important for you, and then call for name, and then you have to specify the entire driver class. JDBC stands for the general sort of database driver in Java, and then this is just a regular driver. Now, this is not going to work by default unless the server already imported the specific library. So this is for the MySQL. Now, if you're working with Spigot 1.16 or above, what you can do, you can head over to Resources, Plugin YML, and then we can just import these two libraries. Okay, you can read about the docs, how this works. Basically, this is going to go to Maven Central, and it's going to download the latest version of the MySQL connector. Please make sure to update the version because probably it's going to get outdated quickly after this video is out. And this one is for MySQL. If you want to do MariaDB, just type in MariaDB here, and it is the first result, the Java client. Same thing here, you just copy the group ID like this one, and then you put in a colon here, then you copy artifact ID, colon, and then you finally copy and paste the version there. Now, SQLite, this one has a different package name. This is how it looks like. This is the latest version at this point of making this video. That's all you need to do. Okay, now heading back here, the way we need to connect to that database is through using a connector line. So this is very similar to actually connecting to the internet, right? If you're obviously familiar, we have the HTTPS or HTTP protocol, right? Instead of using this protocol, we're going to be using the dedicated database connector protocol. Now, don't let me get into that stuff. As I mentioned, this video is going to be a quick implementation guide. All you have to know is this is a URL, and in a URL, we can go to Google, for example, and we have something called query parameters, which means if you type in a little question mark, for example, name, and then you can type in equals John, and another argument, email, you can type in the John's email. Now, this is a little bit more tricky because the add needs to be, encoded properly, but the basic spiel is you can type in different arguments here. And this is exactly what we can be doing in a URL. So let me explain how this URL actually looks like. And let me actually make this a little bit bigger so you guys can see the whole thing. There we go. So we start with the protocol, which is MySQL. If you want to do MariaDB, then you just change this to MariaDB like that. And then we need to get the host. So basically, this is like getting your website. However, this is not going to be, your site.com unless you have a DNS setup. This is actually going to be some database IP. For example, right, this is a valid host, and we're gonna let you configure this from the YML file. Then we need to get the port. So typically, I think this is the default port 3306 or whatever you're gonna get from your hosting provider, right? And then /, so this is the full sort of connection. We need to get a database. So let's say your database name is MC database, and then we need to create the new the opening for the arguments. We do not want to be using SSL, so we do not want to be enforcing some enhanced security here, because I noticed that causes issues, and we want to make sure to keep the connection alive. So we want to use these two arguments, and these 1, 2, and 3 I've actually built into our settings class. So that's why the connection, the URL is a bit longer. Okay. And then I've even printed some debug messages so that you guys can see everything in the console. That's how you create that connection line. Now, for the actual way to connect and use that line, we have to get the driver manager in the java.sql, and we want to get the connection using this URL, and we want to get the connection for the given user and the given passport. So you do not want to be storing this sensitive information in the connector line. We want to be storing this separately. So again, in the settings I have, and I'll show you this in a sec. You don't really need that because this is settings is a universal knowledge. I do have a separate video about that, so no worries. And here you're gonna get the username and the actual passport. All right, that's all you need to do. And this is the magic line. This will actually connect to the database. All there is to it. There is no, because some people wonder and they're getting confused. Is there like a connect method? No, there isn't. Okay, if you call this, it's going to be automatically connecting. All right, and if you call class.forName, it's going to automatically load the driver. So a bit obfuscated, very old school way of doing things, but that's just the way it is. And then if this is MySQL, we do all that. Similarly, if this is an SQLite, we have to load the main driver from this package, and this is the class. However, SQLite, the connector, is actually going to work like your Explorer here. Okay, so if I would, let's say, right-click a file, copy as path, and I paste the file here, delete the double quotes, you'll see that the URL is actually the fully qualified URL to my file. Now, let's say that the file I want to use is database.sql, for example, right? How do we put it here? Well, the best way to put the file there that you want to put your local SQL database to, because just a quick recap for beginners, MySQL is remote. It's on a server. It can be your server, but it's like remote. It's not in the same folder on your disk where your Minecraft server is. And then SQLite can be literally next to your settings.yml in the plugins folder. So big difference there. And then to SQLite, very difficult to connect from another Minecraft server. I don't even think it's possible using this unless you have direct file access. Whereas to MySQL, you can just open up the port on your, I guess, server, and then you can connect to the same database from anywhere, from your website, from a Minecraft plugin, from your mobile application, for God's sakes. So it's more robust. Anyways, back to the code. So let's create a new file, and the file is going to be in our data folder, which is the cocanone in the plugin. So this cocanone is data folder. And then the SQL file name is specified in the config. So I just called it database.sql. And then if the file doesn't exist, we want to create a new file. You can ignore the IntelliJ warning because it is guaranteed that it's going to work. And then when it comes to the actual URL, we want to use the jdbc SQLite . Okay, so difference here, this exchange with SQLite. And then what we want to do is we want to get the absolute path. So it's going to look something like this. Okay, if you can actually print this in the logger, just if you're curious about that. So a little bit old school again, but that's just how it works. And then we're going to get the connection for that absolute URL. All right. Whew, that was a lot. But I feel the need to explain things properly because I don't want to leave you guys confused. This is how you establish two different connector types in Java to SQLite databases. Now, when it comes to creating the tables, right, this is basic knowledge of SQL. SQL stands for Structured Query Language. It is just a simple language for storing, manipulating, and retrieving data in a database. There is plenty of tutorials out there. Nowadays, even AI can probably spit out really good SQL commands. So, for example, this is a command. They'll select everything from the customer's table. In our case, the table is called chat_messages. It has ID, player UID, player name, world, XYZ, message, recipients, and timestamp columns, right? And we simply need to execute a command to create that table when we load the plugin if it doesn't exist. So this is how it looks like. I don't want to spend too much time explaining SQL. Again, nothing to do with Java. This is a universal language. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a quick tip. If you type in SQL syntax checker, literally the first or the second link is going to give you a great website. You can just select MySQL here. Database version can be whatever you're using. Let's just go with the latest one. And you can paste whatever you've copied here. So if you're not sure if something goes wrong, just externalize this like this, okay? And then you can print it out either using system or either using your own logger. Execute the SQL, and then you can copy the SQL from the console, paste it in here. It's going to tell you exactly what's wrong. Or again, nowadays you can use Grok or you can use ChatGPT to even attempt to fix it. In short, we want to create table. If it doesn't exist, this is the name of the table, and then these brackets indicate what is inside the table. So these are the names of the columns. These are the names, these are the data types, similarly to Java, right? For example, a statement could be an object data type, but it doesn't exist. So for example, integer or a varchar is basically just a text that is capped to 36 letters in width. This is capped to 16 for some reason. Actually, I think this is wrong because I used a little bit of AI to help me create that statement. So I think we can actually increase this a little bit longer because some names might be actually longer. Then world, I guess this is also okay if we just store it in text. And then X, Y, Z are going to be integers. Those are never null, by the way. So these are some special properties. And then the message, recipients, also text. Timestamp is a timestamp, so it works like this. And if you double click it on a PHP admin, you can actually edit it nicely. Beautiful. And then you'll notice that we even have a default value, which is the current timestamp. That means when we are inserting the data in the table, we do not need to specify this. If you don't, it's going to automatically insert it with the timestamp to the current value. Now, one final thing is that the ID is a primary key, and then there's a little ternary operator here. So for MySQL, some syntax is a little bit different, a bit confusing. Again, you can literally just copy paste this with the console error to ChatGPT or Grok nowadays. It'll explain pretty well. Or Claude Sonnet has pretty good results with it because some of the languages are a little bit different. So here, just a little difference for SQL. Basically, what we want to do is we want to have an increasing ID. This ID, we're not going to use ever. Literally, the only reason we need it is that the whole database without it is not going to be editable. So I can't really double click here and edit the data. So this is just for convenience sake. And it's also going to make the database indexed and a little bit faster. That's all we need. We can also go a little bit more advanced. I don't have to explain this because this video is not about SQL, but we can basically index the specific column, a player name for faster lookups. This will help you with your performance if you have hundreds of thousands of players there. Also note that we're closing the statement after we've executed it. Very important stuff, otherwise you'll be dealing with memory leaks. Anyways, that's how you create a table. I hope that at least that given you a little bit of context. I do not expect you as a beginner, if you're a beginner, to expect to understand it fully, but at least you should be able to understand roughly what's going on. Okay, we're connecting, we're creating the table has a syntax, name of the column, data type, some special properties. At least it should make like sense high level for you, and that's a win for me. Also, make sure to have a close method. Very simple. If the database is not null and it's opened, we're just going to call close. This is, my friend, what you need to call in the main plugins class. So in onEnable, what we want to do, based in the database getInstance load, so it's right here, we want to load it, and then in onDisable, we want to call database getInstance and then close. Okay, make sure to do that. And then when it comes to saving the chat message and then retrieving the chat message, what I decided to do, I decided to go with something called prepare statement. A little bit more complicated, but here's the point. People can actually do something called an SQL injection, and this is where a lot of YouTube tutorials, they go bonkers, and I really don't like them for that. This is where a person can type in, if you have a message and the person says, I don't know, hello, or 1 = 1 or something, they can actually inject the SQL commands into this line, into, for example, this line, right? And then they can screw around with your database. They can retrieve all of the data, they can delete all the data, and it's very nasty. They can hack your database that way. So we want to make sure it does not happen. The best way to do that in Java is to work with prepared statements. So we want to, and I'm not going to comment on the synchronized block just yet. Again, when you're dealing with databases, wrap it in a try and catch block. Then we want to save the chat message. Make sure to open up a prepare statement from Java SQL. And then we want to insert into the table name, and then you have to spell out manually the name of the columns. You can pretty much create a helper method for that, but this is just a quick demo, so we don't really have to do that. And then what we have to do, I can actually put it on one line for better visibility. We have to put these values into these columns. Now, there's a specific reason why I'm using the little question mark, and that is to prevent people from putting commands there. Because if you don't, they can actually hack your database, as I just explained. So put commands there, and then to actually replace the question marks with the actual value, we want to call a statement and then we want to call set, a little setter. And then here's a bit confusing. So the parameter index is the index from this place, and if you're a Java programmer, you might think it goes up from 0, but unfortunately for us it goes up from 1. The first parameter is 1, so don't get confused here. So we want to replace the player UUID with the unique ID. Now make sure to call toString here. We want to replace parameter number 2 with the actual name. You get the point. Okay, get the point. Just make sure to get the block ID if you're storing location. If you just call X, it's not gonna work. And make sure to call set int, right? If you want to set location as a double, you completely do not need to do that, but then you can actually just call get X. But I just want to call it as an integer. And then set string message. Now, the only thing I guess that I should explain a little bit more is the recipients. So I ask the method to take in a player, to take in a message, and to take in a collection of, recipients, people who will receive the message. And this collection takes in a player. So we have to actually do 2 conversions. Number 1, I'm gonna highlight this. We need to go and open this collection to a Java stream, and then we need to convert every single item in that stream, and we need that we know that the item is a player. We need to convert it into a string, right? Because if you don't, then the JSON will give you something different. You can try and you see for yourself. So first we need to map it to strings, and then we need to convert it back to an array, or you can call collect and then collectors to list if you want this to be a list of strings. It's a bit harder to see here, but if you want to, we can actually just paste it in here like that. Now you see what's going on here. If you just call to array, it's gonna literally retrieve an object, which is an array. So a little bit harder to understand. So I do recommend just going with the good old list. Now, next thing, we want to use the JSON instance, and we just want to put to JSON, and we want to put the object. We want Google JSON library to convert to JSON. Okay, again, a bit complicated, but you just have to understand that there's 2 conversions to basically convert this list into a list of strings and then into a text which has the names comma separated with these weird brackets, which is called JSON syntax. Okay, finally, we have to execute the update. It's going to return the amount of rows which we've changed, close the statement, and then just for convenience sake, I can return the amount of rows that we've changed. If it's 0, means there was an issue saving it. If it's over 1, which there always should be over 1, but I think never more than 1 actually, and that means that we've properly inserted that into the database. Now finally, why there is a synchronized block? Great question. So when it comes to actually using the method, I have it in my chat listener. Now I have it in the async chat, async player chat event, and I'm actually using the scheduler, and I'm running this asynchronously in an async event, which it's fine. I guess you don't really need to do that if it's being called in an async event, but most events in the game are not async. So if you want to save the data in a command, if you want to save the data in a task which runs on the main thread, if you want to save the data in any other game event, for example, player, I don't know, block break event, you want to create a log block plugin, an anti-greet plugin, right? And you don't wrap it in a async block, it's going to cause performance issues because it takes a while to work with databases. It takes a while to connect to that remote server of yours. It takes a while to connect to the file that you have and write to it and save the file. That's why we need to put data to run asynchronously. Now, if you do that, and let's say in the very instance, two players break the block in the same instance at the same time, and you don't use the synchronized block, you can actually cause some weirdness here when it comes to saving to the database, and this will cause concurrency issues. So the best way to sort of get rid of them is just to wrap your code and force Java to wait. And this will mean that we're going to open up a lock for this field, the connection field. Then we're going to run this code. And if there is another attempt at calling the save chat message while we're still working on it, then Java is going to wait. And it's going to only let the second call of the method after the first one has been completed. Okay, you can just Google about that, Google concurrency. Very interesting topic. Don't overdo it, and of course, don't use it, because I've seen it sometimes. Don't use it to hide very poor code. So be careful with it. It's okay to use it here. Generally speaking, I wouldn't. So that's how you do it. Awesome. And then the final method that I wanted to teach you is how to actually get a chat message back from this little table back to the game. Now, you can just return, this massive statement back into a hash map. That's possible too, but I don't like to do that. I don't like to have these, insanely abstract things. So I actually made a database message, and this one represents each column in the database. So there is an int, there's a UUID, 2 strings, integers, string, timestamp even, which is very interesting. This goes to Java SQL, and then a list of string, so basically representing the recipients. Okay, very simple class indeed. Just make a huge constructor. I've also made getters for everything, and then I've typed in a static method from result set. I'm gonna get back to that in a second. Now, the way we're gonna be working with this is first wrap everything as you need. Prepare the list. We're going to be filling it in just a sec. And then here's your query. We want to select, and then the star here is everything. You can, of course, customize it later. You just Google how to customize a select command, please. From the name of the table, and then where, this is the if condition equivalent to Java. If or where player underscore name, so this column equals to, again, a little question mark. Not because I'm a fucking mysterious person, but because I want to prevent people from putting bad stuff there. By order, so order by the timestamp from the latest to oldest. And you can even put in a limit here if you want to limit, let's say that someone's typed 5,000 messages, you only want to retrieve the top 20. Here's how to do it. Then we want to prepare the statement based on this SQL. So this is called a query, but we can also just call it SQL command. And then, similarly to what we've done here, we want to replace that single question mark by the player name, like this one. This is the actual player name retrieved from the method argument. And then we want to execute this as a query. And this one is going to return a result set. Now, we want to loop here because a result set basically represents one row. What if there's two rows? The best way to retrieve both is just to loop the result set. And we can do a simple loop by calling the while method, which is going to ask if there is more rows. So every single time there's a more row, it's going to continue looping, and then we can simply call database message from result set and load the row back into Java. Now, when we're done, we want to close result set, close the statement, and then finally return a list. Now, how to actually get stuff from that result set, from that row? Let's just call it row for simplicity's sake. So we can actually just make a new instance of the class, and then similarly to how you put the data, so set string, right? Set int. All we have to do is just get. So get string, and then we have to parse it back to UUID, get int, get string, and the get timestamp. So it even has these helper methods here. However, it's not that smart, doesn't have the get string here. And by the way, instance JSON, this is a bit strange. So I can just do static, just make it static so IntelliJ doesn't complain, and you guys don't complain below in the comment section that I'm teaching you garbage coding standards. And I can make it a constant. There we go. And then the other warning is completely fine. So now what we have to do is we want to get the string. So we want to get the whole string like this. And then we want to convert it. So from JSON, from this very string, and we want to convert it back into a string. Notice that, yes, there is a warning because, this is an unchecked assignment. We don't really know what Google is going to think, how to convert that. But we're not putting any data type there. This method, trust me, can get more complicated than this. So in its very simplest form, this is just going to convert to a list of strings. And magically, it's just going to work. Don't ask how. You can try to implement it yourself, but the easiest way is just to use Google. Awesome. And then there's a database get instance getter. All right, guys. Wow. Let me know in the comments. First of all, congrats if you're watching this far. Let me know in the comments that make sense. And yeah. let's move on. So we've implemented the database. We make sure to connect in the main class and close the database when the plugin is disabled. We've also implemented the libraries for both drivers. And then finally, let's do a command. So make sure to open your plugin YML again, go down to the command section, and then just write in a database command here, just as I did. Very simple command. And what you can do here, you can just type in view. I experimented with more stuff here before, but I wanted to make this video less than 30-40 minutes long. I don't want to make 3-4 hour long videos that will be covered in my full class. So I'm going to implement a simple command that simply retrieves the data, the chat messages of the given player. Now, how this is going to work, in the command package, I'm gonna have a new database command like this one, which simply connects, which simply has a new simple date format. And this one is simply just to format the time that we retrieve. So from this timestamp, we want to format it back to whatever you prefer, whatever's the locale, the language. You can just Google this if you want to convert it into your own style, right, or your own language, how this works. And then how to implement commands. Again, guys, I have a separate video about that, so hooray, you don't have to spend an hour here waiting for me to explain. Here is also how to send components. So I do have a separate video on how to send these crazy components, so just check these two if you need to refresh your knowledge. I'm not going to comment on those. I'm just going to comment that this is going to throttle. If I type in /db, it's gonna say, hey, database command, please type in db view. And then we're gonna get the little thing here, which is called the parameter. If the little thing equals view, we have to also check if we put a player there. And then the argument 0 is we're gonna process this here. And I guess this is not needed. What we could actually do, the target player name, target player can just be hard-coded, and the code can be inlined like this for maximum satisfaction and simplicity. Awesome. So now that we have that, what we're going to do, we're going to call the instance of the database, get player chat messages, and we're going to cap them to 20. Okay, that's all that there is to it. And all you have to do really is just loop it. And then you can get your stuff here from the database message OOP model, right? Keeping your coding standards high, guys, very important. And then we can just send the sender a message. Now, I know why I'm doing that, not to torture you, but I want to do that because I want to show you what's possible, and I want to also have some very nice hover and click effects here. Again, I have a how to send components adventure video. Basically, you've seen on intro what happened in the chat. This is going to format the timestamp. It's going to be gray. It's going to then append the message as white. And then the hover text is going to be information with the time, world, location, and then click to teleport. And if I click it, it's actually going to run Minecraft command. This is how it works. You can't really run it without the command showing up in the console. You can implement your own hidden command if you want, but Minecraft doesn't support running it directly, so we have to sort of delegate it to running the actual server command as a player. Awesome. And then we have a simple tab complete. Again, check the video about commands on how to do that. Very simple. If I type in /db and I go here and I type in tab, then it's going to just give me view here. So I guess this is not needed, but all this craziness means if I type in A, it's not going to complete A to view, but if I type in V, it's going to complete V to view because it starts with what I've already typed, okay? Very simple. And then this one is going to get the stream of online players. Again, it's going to use our lovely method called map, which will convert the instances to strings. And then it's going to filter those that actually start with whatever I'm typing. So again, /db view, I don't know, Maciej. So if I type in M, it's going to autocomplete Maciej if I'm logged in, right? And it's going to collect it back to the list. If I type something else, do not type completed. Awesome, guys. Very exhaustive explanation. Let me just check the GitHub, whether I comment on everything. So we made a class. We've also made, yep, I forgot to comment that you need to register, get command DB, set the executor to database command. So make sure to do that. Load the database, close it when the server is done. And then what else? Save it when there's an async player chat event. and then database we've also commented, and then plugin, so I've commented on these two things. Now settings, right? So when it comes to settings, and I'm going to keep it very brief. Again, I do have a full video on settings. All I've done is I've typed these things here. Okay, very simple settings, not much to explain here, just a couple of new keys. And then basically I've added in our little cow settings, these things here, database type, blah, blah. And then down here, I simply added, now we want to load these things. And then I simply check if we're using MySQL, we want to enforce all of these settings to be set. If not, then we're just going to complain and throw in a nasty exception. Okay, wrote some getters there that we're using in the database, which you've seen at the very beginning of this video, and that's pretty much it. Okay, that's pretty much it. That's pretty much all that I've added. Now also I'm using the common method tell, which previously took a player in one of my older videos, but I wanted to make it more universal. So instead of putting a player here, I put command center, which means you can use it for both the console and players. And if we're a player, we're just gonna send it using spigot. If we're not a player, we're just gonna use it sending as just a regular colorized method in the chat, in the console, sorry. Awesome. Let's just compile everything and see if everything still works. Surprise, you have been flashlighted. You have to watch me use Eclipse now in white mode. Just kidding, guys. So now you can see connecting to MySQL database. I've changed behind the scenes to my own private. Please do not watch it. Do not copy and steal my data. All my private information right here, which can connect to a remote server. So what that means, if we go to browse and we're going to drop the table and then refresh this little PHP.MyAdmin, you can see we now have the chat messages table created for you automatically. If you start the server again, nothing will change because the table already exists. Now let's connect to the game. Let's just type it hello or halo. There we go. So the first message has ID 1, here's my unique ID, and here's my information here. And now if you type in dbview and then the name, there we go. Now you can see that it's working properly. And I can even teleport myself to where the message has appeared. Just click it, there we go. Now I'm being teleported back. Now I'm also going to do a quick demo when it comes to SQLite. So just change the type to SQLite. These things can then be empty or whatever you want. The SQLite has a file, database.db. In that case, if we start the server, you'll notice that the database.db has been already initialized, and by default, it's quite big for a completely empty file, but this is because of the index is there. I do recommend using something called DB browser for SQLite. You can just open it as a Windows or Mac OS program, and then you can just drag the file on top of it, and you can just browse the data normally as you would. Now let's type in test here, and now both of these players should receive the data. And let's see what will happen. So now I'm gonna refresh the column, and then the recipients is both, right? And the other things stay the same. Now I'm gonna flashlight you some more by using Eclipse some more, and I'm gonna be also adding a new column here called recipients. And Eclipse's AI completion is a bit rusty, so I have to do a little bit praying to get it right. Please just tap complete. Well, I guess it doesn't know, so I have to help it a little bit. Message dot get recipients. Yes, I still want complete. How about this? Okay, whatever. You know what? I'm getting lazy. I'm gonna go to good old typing. How about that? And now I can even use string to join these recipients. And now, my dear friends and viewers, if I type in dbview, whoops, my own name, it says test. And now you can see recipients is both concurrency and the other player. And if I start typing something, you know what? I'm actually too lazy. I'm just going to cap it at 5. And then I'm going to type in dbview concurrency. You'll notice that only the top 5, the latest 5 messages are being rendered. Okay, because this is the limit. So everything works, super happy. I'm surprised too. I'm just kidding. Anyways, hope you enjoyed this video. Hope you enjoyed being flashlighted. And yeah, if you want to learn more, we have a deep dive. It's called Project Orient, which is an insanely advanced and amazing class that I put together which contains all of the stuff about Java, all of the stuff about Bukkit. We have people becoming billionaires. I'm just kidding. We have people who create their own companies based on the stuff that they've learned in that class. We have people who build and scale their own servers to hundreds and thousands of players, which is insane. We have people who got jobs working for international clients, and then they started their own companies. It's a huge program. It's going to teach you everything you need to know about them computers. And I'm not going to be lazy there. I'm not going to be using any AI, so it's going to be very old school learning. It's not going to be any shortcuts, and it's going to make sure to give you hard knowledge, which you will need. So I hope that you enjoyed this video. Drop a comment below if you did. Subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. I don't understand why you wouldn't. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Let me know what you want to learn next. Thank you. Take care.